Welcome back to the channel. My name's Adam Smith, and inside this game overview and gameplay video, I'm looking forward to showing you Rise of Myths Cthulhu. This comes from Synergic Games and is landing on GameFound in the very near future. If you want to find the campaign page to find out more information beyond this video, I'll have a link in the pinned comment, video description, and on screen in the top right-hand corner right now. Now, the purpose of this video is to help you make an informed decision as to whether or not this solo game is for you. You're going to be able to see this thing set up on the table, which I've already gone ahead and preemptively set things up for a true solo play. I'll talk you through the components here on the table, and then we'll dive right into the action of gameplay to show you how it flows and operates. Before we begin, let's find out a little bit more about this game at a high level and also the win and loss conditions. Rise of the Myths Cthulhu is a roguelike deck-building game in which you will improve your deck after each attempt as you face the Great Old Ones and their minions while they try to destroy your body and sanity. You'll take on the role of one of the daring adventurers and face the threat that looms over you alone in true solo play or as a team cooperatively. This game is inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft and his collaborators. So prepare yourself for an epic battle. Every move can make the difference between salvation or absolute doom. Now let's touch on the win and loss conditions. Starting with the win conditions, the game is considered a victory if the characters or character manage to defeat the Guardian in the final confrontation of the location. You'll see here for us, the final location will have Cthulhu, is the Great Old One here in the prototype. It's worth mentioning though, there'll be a number in the final version of the game, and each of them will take a different approach to taking them down. Now, the game can be considered a defeat, just like you'd expect with H.P. Lovecraft games, under several circumstances, both during and outside of combat. So the general ways that a defeat can happen is, of course, if any characters lose all their health points, the game ends in defeat. So for my character, I've chosen to set up the Sorcerer here, and as you can see on the class relic card in the top left-hand corner, we've got the value of health, which is 11, and underneath of that, the sanity level of 9. So if I take 11 damage, that is a loss. Now, the second general way that I can lose the game in the prototype is if I place my 7th exploration token and the characters, or character in my case, as I'll be playing true solo, cannot immediately interact with the Guardian icon, the game ends in defeat. You can see here we'll go through a number of phases, and once we get to the 7th phase, we must go after the Great Old One. If we cannot, and we're not in position to do so, that is a loss. That covers the general ways that we can lose the game. Now let's talk about how things could unfold during combat. So during combat, if any characters lose all their sanity, and at the end of the current turn there is still enemies in play, the game ends in defeat. Again, my sanity is listed right here on the classic relic, so it's 9. So if I have 9 sanity damage, and then I still have enemies in play, that is a loss. The second way during combat that I can lose is if at the end of round number 6 there are still enemies in play, the game ends in defeat. In other words, you can't draw the combat experience out for too long. If you do, the game is going to end. Now, it is important to note you might run into enemies that might change these rules or manipulate them, so that is possible throughout the game. And last but not least, of course, if you lose all your sanity outside of combat, you'll also lose the game as well. Now let's move on to setup. There are 4 major steps to set up the game. The character and location selection is number 1, exploration deck setup number 2, enemy and other deck setup number 3, and character setup number 4. I've gone ahead and done all of these in advance. You'll see that there are 4 characters inside the prototype. I selected the Sorcerer. There is still the Possessed, Seer, and Detective to use. Each one of these handles differently and has different things to manage, which is pretty cool. The Possessed character is able to dole out additional damage based on the damage that the Possessed has taken. The Seer is able to see into the future, able to draw cards from the deck, and the Detective is able to expend ammo tokens to get more powerful attacks. Each one of them has unique mechanics and tokens assigned to them, and the Sorcerer that I'm controlling has its own little spin. I've set up the Sorcerer as my character for this true solo play, and the unique things about this Sorcerer come down to the fact it can sacrifice, basically taking a health hit, in order to dole out some cool damage. It also has the ability to put conditional tokens on the enemies that then can be cashed in for damage based on how many different types of condition tokens you have on the enemy. It also has the ability to manipulate your sanity by increasing it, decreasing it, that kind of stuff. So what's really interesting about this character is that it really rides the line pretty heavy on the health and sanity train, which is tied very, very closely to the loss conditions because it allows you to manipulate those values in order to gain benefit during your combat, but at the expense of a risk of potentially being taken out because you pushed yourself too far. And so because of that, it seems like a very fun true solo character to show you guys. Now, one thing I want to mention before I go any further inside this video is the fact that everything here is subject to change and not in its final state. So there's already been changes that have been made since the printing of this prototype even. So you'll see a lot more information on the campaign page than you will see even inside of this prototype play, as this is not all the components that the final version of the game will have. So a great example of that would be the fact that I've set up my character here. I've got my character tokens. I've got my character Sorcerer starting deck. I know they're starting cards because in the very bottom right-hand corner of the cards, which I won't show you right now, they kind of look like this when they're flipped face up, but they don't have that bronze icon in the bottom right-hand corner. That's how you know that the cards are starter cards, and you'll see them in a little bit when we start drawing things up. We got a class relic here that stays face up, has my stats on it, as well as has an ability towards the bottom. We've got the first player marker essentially, but in this case, I'm playing true solo, so it doesn't really have much value. These also are going to be used to pin which enemies are targeting which character, but if you're playing true solo, they're always going to be focused on the one character. So really this and this don't provide any value for solo play, so we're going to remove them. Now this token right here is going to end up on a map zone. It's going to represent us in the game world. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but in terms of the prototype differences, in terms of what you're going to see in this video versus what's going to be on the campaign page, is there's more buckets of cards for your character to gain a different level. So you have the starter cards, which of course is what your deck starts with. You have the common cards, which is what this prototype includes, but it does not include the uncommon cards and maybe anything beyond that if more happens to come. So there will be additional decks here in the final version of the game that will really allow you to bolster your deck. And of course, the length of this game is not going all the way to the very end. This is a shortened version for the prototype. Now, it's also worth mentioning in the final version of the game, there will be a specific card that is double-sided, and you can choose which side you take in order to get advantages for playing true solo. For this prototype, however, we simply just get to take a look at the class items here, and we get to select one of these to have from the very beginning of the game. So in this case, we have the Voodoo Doll, the Catalyst, and the Fear Eater. The Voodoo Doll on the left-hand side says, when playing a defense card with Sacrifice, inflict bleed 1 to an enemy targeting you. This actually sounds quite useful. I'm likely going to go for that, but let's see the other ones. We got Gain Defense 1 for each Sacrifice card that you play and deals you damage. And then finally, at the other end, we've got, at the end of your turn, discard all conditions from an enemy, regain 1 health for each type discarded up to 2. So you can see, like I was talking about earlier, the more different types of conditions you can put on your enemy, the more health you could get off that one. So that could be a really interesting one too, but I think I'll go with the Voodoo Doll. I've talked enough about the character for now. Let's move on to the rest of the components that are strewn across the game table here. So we have 2 cards. On the right, we have a shop card. You can see the different types of things we can potentially pick up. This, again, is for the prototype. The final version will likely have much more beyond this, but you can see things like first aid. You've got card purchases you can make, and you can, of course, remove cards from your deck to make it more efficient. You need gold or coins, in other words, to make it happen. You have to be able to purchase these things. How do you do that? Well, as you go through the game and the different map zone areas, you're going to encounter different things. You'll encounter enemies, and when you take those enemies down, based on whichever phase you're inside of, you will fight that particular type of enemy, and if you do it successfully, you're going to gain the coins in the row. So if we were in phase 1 and we found a minion and we take it out, we get 1 coin. Not only do you get a coin, you also get the ability to get a card reward, which is going to further bolster your deck and give you more cool combinations to pull off in the future. Now, in the final version of the game, you're not only going to get just card rewards and coins, you're also going to get what's known as progression points. These progression points can then be spent in order to unlock things and really further bolster the different paths you can choose within the game itself. So that progression system, you'll find a lot more information about that on the campaign page. It is not inside of this prototype, so I won't touch on it as it could ebb and change with that campaign. It is worth mentioning, though, in this prototype, we will certainly be getting card rewards and certainly be getting coins as we go along, and I'm hoping to visit the shop to see what we can do to pick up some new cards. Here's a look at the token tray at a very high level. As you'll see, a number of these tokens coming out of the tray during gameplay. We got the exploration tokens here. We've got energy tokens. We get those quite often as we cash cards in, discarding them in order to gain energy. Vulnerability, weakness. We got our defense. We got our damage, stun. We've got sanity, bleed, prison, a number of them, and across the top here, a number of the coins in different denominations, 10, 5, and 1. And on the far right-hand side, a lot of character-specific and high-level tokens. There's even a coin in here to flip, as certain cards will call for it with heads and tails on it. Last but not least, a number of card decks, and I've got a single card pulled out here. The Map Guardian card is pulled from this Map Zone deck in order to be placed aside, as this is the location of where Cthulhu, the Great Old One, will be in my case. And then the Curse deck here is going to tie to the Great Old One when we actually get to that Guardian location to attack it. Then we'll go into a battle, which will have the Cthulhu deck as well as the Curse deck pulled into it. So right now we're going to be focusing on the decks down below, which is going to be the Map Zone deck, which has been shuffled. We've got the Arkham events if we're called to an event. If we actually go to a location where there is an event, we can pull from there. Synergy relics are only going to be used when you're playing with 2 or more characters. So in this case, that deck is not going to be used for true solo play, but that could change in some way, shape, or form in the final version of the game. In the final row, we have a number of different enemies. These are broken up by type, and you'll see in this case we've got Arkham across all of them, and it says enemy minion, enemy common, and enemy servant. In the final version of the game, there'll be things like enemy elites, for example. There's other types. You'll just simply break them into their types, shuffle them independently, and keep them nearby. We are now ready for gameplay. Let's draw the very first map zone and find out where we're starting our adventure to find Cthulhu. So here's the very first map zone. You're going to see a number of different icons here. Some of them stick out rather than others. For instance, the portal here is a little bit hidden, but that portal allows us to move through it to another portal location we may find in the future. So not much use to us right now, but will be very useful potentially in the future. We have a couple combat encounters here, which are what those symbols represent. At this point, we need to place a marker representing our party, or one character in this case, somewhere in an open area on the street. It can't be actually at one of these locations, it has to be between them, or up here in this area would be fine, or down here in this. It's worth mentioning that you'll see arrows all the way around the card. These are all the connection points that other map zones can connect to when they're revealed in the future once we decide to traverse from wherever we are off that side of the map. So if we want to go this way, or we wanted to go through some combat encounters and then go down here, we've got lots of options. I'm going to place my marker between the combat encounters, and at this point we are inside the exploration phase where we can start exploring around and interacting with different icons. So I'm actually going to head south to this combat encounter right here. So knowing this is a combat encounter, we go into the very first phase, which is going to be a minion combat encounter. So for the first time, I'll show you exactly where that's coming from. We got the enemy minion deck right here. So we're going to go ahead and draw the top card off of it to find out what minion we're going up against. It's going to be a corrupted. So my sorcerer is going up against a corrupted, and as you can see, it's a minion. We knew this, but in terms of the power hierarchy for the enemies, common enemies are at the very bottom of that, then minions, then servants, superiors are next, which are not in the prototype, elites after that, which are not in the prototype, and then the guardian, which in this case is Cthulhu. Now this combat setup is quite simplistic. There's just one enemy to flip over, but if you happen to have more, you go ahead and flip them over from left to right, and then you take a look at the initiative number in the top right-hand corner and place them in the row left to right from highest to lowest. Now, if any of them are the same, you'll leave them in the order that they already are. So if we happen to flip over 2 and they both were 2, we just leave them the way they were drawn out. In the top right-hand corner next to the initiative value, there's also an icon. It's going to be different for almost every single enemy you encounter because it's going to specify which character that enemy is focused on. In this case, it's going to be going after the individual with the highest sanity. But in my case, as I'm playing true solo, every single enemy will be targeting me. The top left of the card is going to tell me how much damage I need to put on this thing in order to kill it, and this is going to tell me what it's going to get on a round-by-round basis as we go through the combat rounds in terms of attack against me, which is going to be a 3 in the first round, and then its defense, what I have to work through in order to get the damage on the card in the first place. As you have 6 rounds of combat to take out the enemies in a combat encounter, you'll start with round 1, then round 2, round 3, and then repeat back here for round 4, 5, and 6. The only difference for 4, 5, and 6 is at 4, you're going to have another common enemy enter the fray. At round 5, you're going to lose a sanity, and at round 6, you're going to have a minion enter the fray. Now, when you're inside of a combat encounter, you're going to go through something known as the maintenance phase, then the character's turn, and then the enemy's turn, and repeat this to complete one full combat round. So we're going to start with the maintenance phase, and in this phase, we're simply just going to place tokens based on what the corrupted minion has to start in the very first column, which is going to be 1 defensive token. Now let's go ahead and drop our cards and see what we have to work with. So we're going to go ahead and get 6 cards off the top of the deck. So we have Ivy's Skin, we have Mother Earth, Universal Donor, Drain Life, Ivy Skin yet again, and lastly, Mother Earth. Now here's an up-close look at my 6 cards in hand and what they can do. I'll quickly go through them. We have Mother Earth. This is a defensive card that can inflict weakness to one enemy that targets me. I have to sacrifice 1, which means I have to take a health hit in order to do so, and I also lose a sanity on top of it. Now to do this card, I need to pay the cost in the top left-hand corner. This defensive card, all defensive cards have the blue in the top left-hand corner. The red cards are attack, and then the yellow cards are skill. So in terms of the blue cards for right now, if I wanted to do this, in order to pay for a card, you have to discard a card of equal value or one that's even higher in order to pull it off. So as soon as you discard a card for its value in the top left-hand corner, you basically turn it into energy tokens, and then you use those tokens to pay for cards out of your hand that you actually want to put into play to gain the effect on the card itself. So Ivy Skin, for example, is another defensive card we could potentially use. It inflicts bleed in this case. And this one here is called Drain Life, allows for a melee attack. We attack and we can regain some health when we do it because, of course, we're regaining or draining health from somebody else. A permanent skill here is something we can put into play and it actually stays in play. It makes my melee attacks with sacrifice inflict 1 bleed, and we also get to gain an additional energy token, which is nice. And then we have some more defensive cards here to look at. So I know I need to get through the 1 armor in order to do any damage to this corrupted minion. It's also going to be coming at me for 3 damage, so I need to put up some defenses if I want to avoid taking hits. But I'm going to play Universal Donor to start things off. It costs absolutely nothing, so I do not have to discard any cards to get energy in order to play this card. It's a permanent skill, so it stays in play for the duration of combat, unless, of course, some game effect throws it away. It says here, your melee attacks with sacrifice inflict 1 bleed, and we also gain some energy as well. Now, the energy token can go anywhere. It could go into this empty space or whatever, but for now, I'm going to place it on top of the class relic. The relic does not need this in any way, shape, or form. This is going to be the area where I keep things like sanity, health damage, and any conditional tokens that I have. So I've got that one there. That's not a condition token. That is actual like currency for me to use to go ahead and spend my cards. And of course, if I want to, I can just straight up discard a card from hand like I was saying earlier for 2. If I discard it, I gain 2 energy, so I have 3. But I've got plans here for this one right off the hop. We're going to go ahead and use Mother Earth. Mother Earth is a defensive card. It's going to provide me with 2 defense. I'll go ahead and place that 2 right on my class relic card for now. And we're going to go ahead with the inflict weakness of 1. We'll flip this over to the one side to an enemy, so we'll give it to the corrupted minion. Next, I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice 1, which is states right on here, and we lose 1 sanity on top of it. Now, at this point, our class item is going to trigger. It says when playing a defensive card with sacrifice, which mine was, inflict a bleed to an enemy targeting you. So we again know that any enemies in this game are going to be targeting me, so that bleed is going on the corrupted. Not too bad for 1 card's worth of use. We'll go ahead and just turn this card sideways to denote we've used it. Now I'm going to choose to play this one here, Drain Life. It's a melee attack, so we attack for 2 and regain 1 health. To pay for it, I'm discarding this card for 2. I won't take any of the energy tokens because it's a clean transaction there. So attack 2 is going to hit the shield for 1 and place 1 damage on this corrupted. And we also got to take 1 damage away from us, so we're no longer suffering any damage. We still have a little bit of sanity hits there, and this card has been used. Now, the unfortunate thing is I have 2 cards in hand, and neither one of them is really something I want to do right now. And looking at the Corrupted for the second round of combat, it's going to beef up its defense like crazy, which isn't so great. But this is where I'm going to stop right here. Now, it does say right here at the end of your turn for your class relic, if any enemy has more than 1 condition, deal 1 damage to an enemy or regain 1 sanity. Now, as of right now, we have 2 condition on here, weakness and bleed, so we can deal a damage to the enemy or we can regain our sanity. Now, seeing that the second round of combat is going to be a little bit tougher, let's go ahead and take that extra hit against the enemy. Happy with that. I'll keep my sanity damage to myself. Now, at this point, all played cards, as well as cards left in my hand, go to the discard pile, except for the permanent skill, which is permanent. It's going to stay here for combat. Now we're going to move to the Corrupted actually activating. It's going to try and do a 3 damage hit against me, but it's weakened by 1, which means it'll only be 2 against me, and I've got 2 defense, so none of its damage comes through. It's now the end of its turn, and at this point we take a look at any conditions that might trigger. It has bleed, so this 2 is turning into a 3. And that, my friends, is 1 full round of combat, so we'll pick things up as we go along here. Now, going to the second round, we take a look during the maintenance phase of the Corrupted, and the only thing to trigger is just placing the defense on. It's got 3. It is worth mentioning at the end of the first combat round, let's say hypothetically it still had that 1 defense on it, it would not have 1 plus 3 going into the second round. The defensive tokens that are sitting there are removed. The same goes for your character. Now, as we begin our game with 12 starter cards and you draw 6 cards for the first combat round, the next combat round is a 6-card draw, which means we deplete our entire deck and we'll have to reshuffle it and replace it when we need to draw cards in the near future. So here are the 6 cards drawn up because these are all the ones that were left in the deck. We got Blood Call, we have Drain Life, we have Trail, we have another Trail, and then these are melee attacks. Then we have a Blood Call, another melee attack, tons of them, and then Ivy Skin. I'm going to go ahead and play this Blood Call. This is going to allow me to do a melee attack. It is going to be 2 attack, but I have to sacrifice 1. So I'm going to go ahead and throw 1 on myself. And it's worth mentioning that the 2 is going to be sucked up by the defense here, which is going to drop to just a single defense. But wait, as we can see, we have a permanent skill that says your melee attacks with sacrifice inflict 1 bleed, plus we gain an energy. So we actually gain an energy thanks to this permanent skill, which is going to be useful. And we also throw bleed onto the enemy. Let's go ahead and do the exact same thing. I got another Blood Call I'll use for no energy whatsoever. This is going to do an attack 2, sacrifice 1. So it's going to take away the shield that's here. It's going to bump up the enemy's damage to a total of 4. But I'm also going to be inflicted with 1 more hit. So I'm jumping up to a 2. Yet again, my permanent skill is going to trigger because I'm using a melee attack. So it's going to go ahead and bump up to a 2 for bleed, which is awesome. And then we're going to gain another energy. Next, we'll go ahead and use both of the energy we have gained from the previous 2 cards in order to pay for this Drain Life card here, which is a melee attack. We attack for 2, which is all we need in order to kill off the corrupted minion. We don't even need the bleed because we have 4 already on it. This 2 will go straight through as there's no defense, and we're going to regain 1 health as well, so we're not taking as much damage for all the blood calls we did. And just like that, we've taken on our very first enemy minion, which means we're going to be gaining 1 coin, which will help us later on. We need to purchase things at a shop, or if we have other game effects that allow us to pick things up earlier. And at this point, we also get a card reward. It's worth mentioning that as soon as the enemies are at 0, the combat immediately ends. The same is the case for the characters. If your health is reduced down to 0 during combat, the game's also over in a loss. Moving on to card rewards, each character can only add 1 card to their deck depending on the highest level of the defeated enemies that you just took down. So in my case, it's just a minion. So if you have taken down at the highest a common, minion, or servant level, then you're going to be grabbing cards from the common reward pool, which is this one right here with the bronze looking icon in the bottom right hand corner. Or if you took down a superior or elite as part of your combat, it could have been mixed with some of the lower level ones, but as long as a superior or elite are part of the fray, then you go to the uncommon card reward pool, which is not part of this prototype, but will be in the final game. And it'll be represented, I believe, with a silver icon in the bottom right-hand corner. At this point, we reveal 3 cards from the type of deck that we just determined, so in my case, common cards. And if there are duplicate cards revealed during this, you reveal additional cards until there are 3 unique cards to choose from, but each character has the option to pay 1 coin as well, or lose 1 sanity point, 1 time only, to reveal another additional card and choose one among the 4 available. So if you want to push this card reward a little further and get something more than what you're seeing, you can pay a coin or pay with your sanity. Once you've chosen your card, whether it's from the pool of 3 that's default available, or you've paid sanity or a coin to see 4, once you've selected a card, all the rest of them go right back and shuffled into that pool. It's also worth mentioning as another option the character can choose is you can pick to add 2 coins to your reserve instead of adding a new card to your deck once things have been revealed. So you can take a look across them, you could even pay to go a little further, be unhappy about the entire thing, and then just get 2 coins back as basically payment for your pain of not finding something worthwhile. This is actually a pretty tough call. I'm actually quite happy with what I'm seeing here for choices. I just don't know which one to go for. The absorption one is pretty awesome. The natural barrier is pretty awesome. And these are the ones I'm leaning towards. I think the single use could be good in certain situations, but I think the absorption and natural barrier are cooler. The only downside is they're going to cost a little bit more to pull them off. So it's going to take away from what I can do with the rest of the cards in my hand when I draw them. But this is pretty cool because it allows me to regain some health. And I don't think I have too many cards in my hand that allow me to regain health. I think I have more of a focus between my class relic as well as my class item in regaining sanity. So getting a little bit of a health uptick could be good, seeing as I like to push myself during combat on the health side of the equation. I'll be adding my newly chosen card into my deck, shuffling it up. I'll also be returning the Universal Donor card, which I should have placed in there before we even got into this reward situation. Basically, any cards that are permanent skills go back into your deck and are shuffled back in. They have to be replayed back out in another combat down the line. Don't keep these things out and assume you get to keep them throughout the entirety of the game. After a successful encounter, whether it's a combat encounter, an event encounter, or a shop encounter, you're going to place one of these tokens, these exploration tokens, starting with number 1, right on top of it to signify that you have done this. Now at this point, we're going to move from here. So as soon as you move from that location is when you place it there. I'm just placing it there in advance to show you. The reason is if you traverse back over top of something you've completed, you have to pay insanity to do so. As I move south from the combat encounter, I'm choosing to explore to the south of this card. I could also choose to go off this way as well, as there's an arrow there too, but I'm going to go down here. We're going to drop the next map zone and see what we get, and then we have to basically link it up and hope that it does. And it does in this case. You can see the colors actually line up, so we can actually traverse down that way. Now, let's say we pulled a card and we weren't able to actually attach it. If that was the case, you continue drawing map zone tiles or cards until you find one that can. No matter how many you draw, you're going to take a 1 sanity hit for doing so. In other words, think of it thematically as yourself getting lost in the streets, trying to find a path that actually makes sense to take. Now this new map tile opened up a couple new things here. So first off, you can see underneath my token, which I just placed as I move down here, is an event. Below that, we have a shop we can go to with the coins that we have over time to buy something of use. There's also a combat encounter over here, but you'll see that this whole thing kind of loops up this way, but there is an arrow down here. So we could come down and head over this way if we wish, or we could kind of loop back, but it would be a dead end. So it might make sense to kind of head in that direction. So for an event, we simply take an Arkham event in this case and flip it over, top one off the top of the deck, and it ends up being the Cthulhu Idol. This is pretty cool looking. A character keeps this card. That card can be, that can be exchanged for 4 coins at any shop. Flip the fake coin. Heads, no additional effect. Tails, characters are dealt 1 damage and lose 1 sanity. So this is where that coin I was talking about way earlier on in the video is going to come into play. We're going to go ahead and flip this, and if we see the head side, well, that's what we want to see. We don't want any additional effects. Tails, it's not going to be good. Let's go ahead and flip it and see how we do. We got ourselves heads. We are safe. You're not going to see me complaining about that. That's a pretty awesome one to have, giving us so many coins on top of the 1 we already have. So we got a total of 5 now if we head to a shop, and we happen to have a shop south of us. So let's continue moving that direction. Now, once again, as we leave that particular location, we have to place an exploration token. So we're going to go ahead and move our token for now, place this on top of it, and we'll continue to travel down towards the shop. As we arrive at the shop, we hand over our wonderful Cthulhu Idol, which allows me to cash this in for 4 coins. After making a nice deal at the shop, we got ourselves some additional coins here, and we have the choice to get some first aid kits if we wish. These can help us regain 2 health or regain 2 sanity. They're 5 coins a piece, which would take everything that I have in order to do so, so probably not the best thing to do right now. You can do it once per character per shop, essentially, and the other thing I'd rather do is do a card purchase. We can do a common card purchase for 2. Again, this is only 1 time, but we could also do a removal, so we could do a card purchase and a card removal. For this draw, we got these 3 cards. I'm actually quite happy with these. I'm just going to try and figure out which one I want to pick up. So we got Affliction here. We have Concentrate Pain and Blood Blade. This actually looks awesome. This melee attack here is an attack 4 to sacrifice 1, so it's a huge swing. This could come in very handy, very expensive, but could be very worthwhile. Concentrate Pain here is a skill. Discard all conditions of up to 2 enemies and deal 1 damage for each discarded condition, and you get to regain some sanity. That's also really good. And you got Affliction. We actually saw Affliction in the prior one as well. So I'm really kind of eyeing these 2 right now. I'm going to choose to take Concentrate Pain because it really lends itself well to what I'm trying to do with my deck, and also allows another way for me to get sanity back. So I've just added recently something to regain health. Now I've added something that's going to regain sanity. So these 2 are going to go back into the deck. But the great news is, even though I'm not taking this attack card, we can look for something with attack in the future somewhere else. But I've kind of covered both sides of the equation with the first 2 cards I was able to put in my deck. I paid the 2 coins for the new card in my deck, and now I'm going to go ahead and spend another coin for this one down here to remove Trail from my deck. And I'll hold on to the rest of my coins for a future purchase, and we'll leave the shop. Another event completed. This is going to be our 3rd one. We're now going to head off to the side here, heading west to see what we can find. Hopefully we can find a card that actually attaches so I don't lose sanity. Yes. And this side is actually perfect. As you can see, it has the same color, but it also has 2 options. So I could choose to actually have it connect like this, or I could choose to have it connect like this, whichever I prefer. I've chosen to place the map tile just like this and place myself in the courtyard area before I make my next decision as to where I want to go. I want to talk about backtracking one more time just to make sure I nail this and provide clarity around it. If you want to backtrack for some strange reason, which might actually occur depending on how the game lays out the map tiles and how you lay them out. Say, for instance, if you wanted to go back to this combat encounter right here, you'd be traversing over a completed event. Going over one event, that's all it takes, it's completed, is going to cost you sanity. It also does not matter how many events you traverse through, it's still just one sanity hit. So if I was to go to this combat encounter, it's one sanity hit. If I was to go all the way back to this one, it's still just one sanity hit. But you don't want to be doing that too often because, of course, that's just hurting your chances of dealing with Cthulhu later on if you've got a bunch of sanity damage because you kept backtracking over top of things you completed. So do so wisely. Let's go ahead and check out an Arkham event. I'm excited to see what we find. We're going to go ahead and flip over a card. We got ourselves the library. This library is not quiet. We're diving right into a combat, so we're going to go ahead and do that in a second. There's also a challenge attached to this one, which is what makes these specific event cards that bring combat into the equation special. So this challenge tells us to defeat enemies by their initiative order, highest to lowest. So we have to do this. If we do it, one character keeps this card, discard at any time to discard a condition or a curse. That's awesome. Curse cards are going to come into the fray until we deal with the great old one, but it will be a great card to have if we can get it. And then, of course, if we fail this challenge and we kill off a lower initiative creature first before the higher one, then we're going to lose some sanity. We are now moving into the fourth encounter. In this case, it's going to be 2 minions. It's now time to find out what kind of pain is coming my way in the library. The first one up is a haunting dog that does not look good. Next one up is a host. Works out quite nicely because this haunting dog is initiative of 3 and this host is initiative of 1, so they're already in the right order. If they weren't, we just switch their positions. There's also an interesting condition on this host here. It says if it receives damage and is not defeated by the end of that round, swap it for a random servant. So things are going to get a little more painful. So it's actually a good thing we need to kill this top initiative one off first before we touch this one. So we can ensure when we hit it, we hopefully just take it out in one round. The haunting dog is not going to be doing anything for defense, which is nice. We can go right after its health, but it will be inflicting bleed if it's still around. The host here does have defense at 3 going into things. Let's go ahead and drop our cards. I've shuffled my deck. We're going to get 6 cards off the top. We got Drain Life. We're going to go ahead and pull off the next one. We got ourselves Concentrate Pain. That's the newest one we got, if I'm not mistaken. Then we got ourselves Mother Earth. Next up, we have Blood Call and Trail. And finally, we have Drain Life. Now, it looks like I got the cards that I need in order to drain the life out of this haunting dog. I've got 2 of those, which is perfect. Allows me to also gain some health so I can get that health damage back that I've got. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do Concentrate Pain. We're going to discard this in order to get 2 energy. And of course, we're going to be using that energy almost right away. So there's really not too much point in taking it, but I'll take it just for the fun of things. We'll go ahead and place the 2 energy on here. Of course, as you get familiar with the game and play it, you don't even have to put some of these tokens out if you're paying a 1-for-1. But we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's do the Drain Life card for an attack of 2. And there's no defense on this thing. It's also going to regain me some health. So that is gone. The 2 damage we're going to throw, actually I'll just use that exact same token to place on the haunting dog. So now we just need 1 more hit. We're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing. I'm going to toss Mother Earth and Trial, or I should say Trail. That's going to be, I think I said that multiple times in this play so far. Those 2 are going to go. We're going to do Drain Life once again. Another attack 2. That is going to be enough to take down the haunting dog so we don't have to deal with it, which is awesome. We're doing it in initiative order, so far the challenge is looking good. These cards are both done. I have no health to regain from that, and these tokens are certainly gone. The last card I have is a free one to play, but it's called Blood Call, and it's a melee attack, but the problem is it's an attack one with a sacrifice, and this thing has defense, so it wouldn't even get through in the first place. So let's go ahead and discard it along with everything we've played so far and call that a turn. The host is going on the offensive with a 2 damage attack, and I'm not defending anything because I was very focused on attacking, so we're taking a 2 damage hit. The defense that's on it is going to be thrown away. It doesn't keep it round over round. That's going to do it. We're going to go into the maintenance phase. It's only going to get 1 defense going into this one, and that's nice because now we can put every effort into trying to take this thing down. Let's go ahead and draw up our cards. We're going to go ahead and start with Ivy Skin. I swear I said Ivory earlier in the play. Another Ivy Skin. We got, oh my goodness, we got a lot of these. Blood Call. Come on, get some attack in here. Absorption, and finally Universal Donor. Now I need to focus on the fact that I need to put enough damage to take this thing out before the end of the round, otherwise it's going to be swapping out, as you know. So we're going to go ahead right now. I think I have 2 cards I can use to make this happen. So we'll go ahead with Blood Call. This is going to be kind of aggressive. We're going to do attack 2, it's free, and we're going to sacrifice for 1. So we are going to be knocking ourselves up to 3 total hits now. We only have 11 to take before we're down, so we got to be careful with that. So we sacrifice, we do attack of 2, and that is going to just chink away at the 1 and then put 1 on him. So we need 3 more to take the host down. Next up, we're going to go ahead and discard a card from hand, the Ivy Skin, for 2 energy. That's going to allow us to go ahead and play Absorption. This one is a melee attack, single use. It is a attack 3, which is exactly what we need to take it down. We get to regain a health, so basically I get that health back from the one I just lost, which is awesome. So we'll go ahead and swap the 3 out for a 2, so we're not as badly hurt as we were initially. And we are going to lose a sanity, though, so our sanity is going to flip to 2. So we have 2 health hits and 2 sanity hits so far, but this 3 single-use attack is going to go straight through right now, and it's going to take out the host. So we have completed this combat. So we completed the challenge in the library. 1 character keeps this card, discard at any time to discard a condition or a curse. Thank you. I will absolutely put that next to my character. Now it's time for rewards. We're going to take a look at the setup here for the combat encounters for phase 4, which was 2 minions. We're getting 2 coins, so I've got that up top there. Adding to the 2 coins we already have, which is a total of 4. We now get a card reward. We can again pay to see a 4th card if we wish, or we can just take 2 coins right now if we want just money. But taking a look at what we got here, we got a defensive card here, defense 2. If any enemy targeting you has a condition, add some defense. That could be cool. Internalize skill, add attack 1 and defense 1 to your cards with sacrifice. They reduce sanity instead of health this turn. That's also very cool. Deformation is a melee attack. Attack 2 if the enemy is trying to inflict you a condition, add attack 2 and inflict 1 vulnerable. That could actually be good. We need some attack stuff because I focused on other things. So maybe deformation would actually be the best one. Now this might be a bit of a gamble, but I think I'm going to go ahead and spend that 1 coin to see 1 more card. I'm going to gamble and hope that it's a decent one. Let's go ahead and see. Chaining, that seems kind of cool. It's not an overly strong one, but it could be decent. So 2 melee attack, it's an attack 2, inflict bleed, and also prison. Prison's a cool condition because when it gets placed on an enemy, the next time they attack, instead of them attacking, they'll first go ahead and lose a health for every single prison token that they have on them, which means they could be killed before they even are able to make an attack. So a pretty worthwhile card. So we got that event taken care of. We'll go ahead and place an exploration token on it. That's the 4th one, which means we're going to trigger the Map Guardian card coming in. Now, just for clarity, we are still currently at number 4, which means we're on this map tile right here, map zone. And so because of that, we have to choose to place this attached to this particular card. So we could choose with the options available here to connect it like so. That would actually work. Or we could try to connect it this way, but that will not work. And we could try to connect it this way. That would work. So we can go here or we can go here. The Guardian Zone is now in place. We know where Cthulhu is, and you can see from where I am currently, I can go to the left or to the right. Either way, it's through a combat encounter and then into this area here. Now, I don't have to go that way. I could go a different way. I could choose to go to this combat encounter and then go to this combat encounter and then come over here if I wanted to in order to kind of bolster myself. After we do 1 combat, we'll see where we're currently at. I've got a decent amount of cards added into my deck. It might be worthwhile to give it a shot to see what we can do against Cthulhu, but it could be tough either way. We have up until the 7th phase to try to take this individual down. So we'll move up to that right side combat encounter. It's going to be a common and a servant this time for our enemies. Time to find out what kind of pain and suffering is coming our way in this combat encounter. We found a chaplain as well as a midwife. These are not going to be easy to defeat. The initiative for both of these are the exact same, so no change there. They can stay exactly the way they were laid. This one here is going to get in the maintenance phase 2 for its defense, and this one here gets 2 for its defense, but it comes as a result of the 2 protection icon up in the top left, which tells us at the maintenance phase of every single combat round, this midwife is getting 2 defense. So once it finally gets to combat round number 3, when it gets 2 here, it will be 2 on 2, which will be 4 for that 3rd round. Not good. With the enemies all set up, let's go ahead and draw up our 6 cards and find out what we have for our starting hand. The first card off the top is Ivy Skin. Next one is Trail. After that, we've got Blood Call. Next up is Concentrate Pain. Next is Chaining, the most recent card I believe we got. And the one after that, Ivy Skin yet again for 6. I think I'll start things off with Blood Call here. So a melee attack is going to be attack 2, sacrifice 1. So we're going to go ahead and attack, I believe this one here will knock the defense off of it for 2. Sacrificing 1 is going to uptick my amount of damage to myself to 3. And that's going to resolve that card. It's free. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and discard this card for 2 energy. We won't take the tokens because I'll use them right away. We're going to use Ivy Skin. This card here is going to allow me to get a defense of 2 and then inflict bleed 1 to all enemies that target me. That's going to do it. That card provides me 2 defense and also throws some bleed on the enemies, which is great. Now, if this defensive card had had sacrifice involved, then the voodoo doll could have been triggered, and that would have given a nice little bonus of an additional bleed, but not going to happen this time around. Let's continue on. I really need to pump up my defense because I got 2 damage coming to me from this one and 5 from this one. I don't think I can actually take either one of these down, so I probably have to focus more so on trying to actually defend myself from taking too many hits in this situation. So we'll go ahead right now. We're going to use Ivy Skin yet again. This is again going to do the same thing we just did. It's going to beef up my defense and throw another bleed on each of them. So we'll simply go ahead and flip these bleeds over to be 2. And my defense is going to jump up by another 2, which is nice because we got 4 now. And is there anything else involved with this? I don't think so. Just to pay for it, we'll go ahead and use chaining here to pay for that one. And unfortunately, that's all I've got for energy at this point. This card is going to be discarded. That's going to end off my turn. The class relic says at the end of the turn, if any enemy has more than 1 condition, you can deal a damage to an enemy or regain sanity. We currently only have 1 condition on each of them, so that's not going to satisfy that. So I cannot use my class relic right now. Now we go ahead from left to right, activating the enemies. So we have the first one here is going to do an attack against me for 2, but I block it for 2, so that's great news. Then after it's resolved, it's going to go ahead and take a bleed of 2, which is going to remove both these tokens and throw 2 damage on it. Not enough to kill it, but getting close, which is nice. And then we're going to go ahead to this one, scarier. This one says, and actually this one says attacked characters lose a sanity. So actually we lose a sanity on top of this as well as part of its wonderful ability. So we'll go ahead and try and find a sanity here of value 1. I currently have 2 sanity hits already. Now I've got a total of 3 sanity hits and 3 health hits. Not good. The midwife here is going to go ahead and attack me for 5, which is crazy high. We're going to block 2 of it, but take 3. We have a total of 6 damage on our character out of 11 total. We'll talk about something in just a moment I want to touch on for wounds, but as of right now, this enemy has now gone. The bleed token is going to cause it 2 damage. Thank goodness we get something on it to start working our way up to 7. Defensive tokens no longer matter that are on the characters, and that's going to do it. Now, just before we go into our combat round number 2, I want to talk about health and sanity because there's something else going on inside of this beyond just keeping an eye on it to make sure it doesn't hit its max. Of course, that results in a game loss. You also don't want to get into a wounded or an insane state. These are 2 things that can be painful for you. I'm currently in a wounded state because right now I have 6 damage on me. My total health is 11, and if you're ever at 5 or less in terms of remaining hit points, you are in a state of being wounded in terms of the damage side of the equation. Now, of course, on the sanity side, if you've got too much sanity damage to the point where you only have 5 sanity remaining or less, then you are considered to be insane. Now, per the rules in the prototype, on the health side of the equation, when you get into a wounded state, there's going to be game effects on cards that may trigger or behave differently because you're in a state of being wounded. So keep an eye out for that keyword. Now, a very thematically cool aspect of the gameplay is when you start getting into the insane part of the equation, in other words, you have 5 or less in the sanity boat, then your character is going to go through a unique situation. Every character has its own unique insane condition. Let's go into combat round number 2, maintenance mode, grabbing 2 defense for this enemy based on the middle column here. It's going to come at me for 1 damage, not much, but it's got some defense there. We should be able to take this one out, I hope. Midwife has got 2 because of the protection, not because of anything down here in the columns. It is the middle column for round number 2. You'll see a vulnerable token there, which I've placed. We'll talk about that in a second. You also see a hit of 3 is what she will end up doing to me. It's got brackets around it. What that means is if there was multiple characters playing, it would hit everybody in play. In this case, it's all coming to me regardless. So those brackets don't mean anything when you're playing true solo. The vulnerable token works a little bit differently in this game versus other games where it typically will times things by 2, making it quite powerful. In this game, it's just going to add 1 to whatever attack's already being done. So if it's an attack 2, it's turning into attack 3, and that gets discarded. Let's go ahead and drop our cards and see what kind of a hand we've got going on here. We got ourselves at the very beginning Mother Earth. Next up, off the top of the deck, is Absorption. After that, we've got Mother Earth yet again. After that, we have Universal Donor. Then we've got 5th card is Drain Life. And finally, the 6th is Ivy Skin. The first card I'm going to play is not really going to benefit me this round based on the cards I have in hand, but Universal Donor is that permanent skill. Your melee attacks with sacrifice inflict bleed and GE +1 when they do. So that's kind of nice. A nice way to generate some energy and additional bleed, but I don't have the cards that really make use of that right now, but that's okay. Let's go ahead with Mother Earth here. This could be quite fun. We're going to spend both of these by discarding them in order to get 2, and we're going to go ahead and use Absorption. This one here is a melee attack, and I actually have to think about this. Do I want? Yeah, this makes sense. Melee attack, single use. This is going to do 3 damage. It's going to allow me to regain a health, lose a sanity, so I'll have to do that. But the good news is I get my health back on track, and the 3 attack I'm going to place on the chap lane right here, and that individual is going to go because 2 defense, and the one on top of the 2 that's already there will take it out. So at this point, I got 5 damage on my character, 4 sanity damage on my character. I'm no longer considered wounded because I have 5 damage, which means I have 6 life points, so I'm above the 5 or less limit to be wounded, so that's good. And also going to mention something, we have a vulnerable token on this midwife to make, or hopefully take advantage of if I possibly can with the last 2 cards I've got. The other thing to make mention of is in the middle here, it says adds 1 attack permanently when another enemy is defeated. So because I took out that other enemy, this attack coming at me in the future is going to be that much more fun. So instead of a 3, it will be a 4. That's not good. So the question really becomes, out of the 2 cards I have Drain Life, which would focus on attacking and regaining a health. So that does 2 damage towards it, which gets completely blocked by the shield, but the one vulnerable will get 1 on him. So we go up to 3 damage total, which is okay. And then this other one, this Ivy Skin card could be better because you get 2 defense. And that could be honestly better seeing as I have more coming at me in terms of damage. And that is better, I think, getting 2 defense versus just getting 1 heal. This also inflicts bleed, so that's not bad. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll pay for it using the opposite card, Drain Life. All right, that's as good as it gets. So the midwife is going to go ahead right now. It's going to be throwing at me a total of 3 damage, which is not so much fun. I'm just taking a look to make sure nothing's being changed by that. Nope, everything else will keep things the same. So 3 damage, minus 2 defense on my side, so 1 gets through. That'll take the 2 that I have back to a 6, and we're now considered wounded once again. Next up, we're going to go ahead and inflict bleed here, so that's good. It is going to get 1 through, which will convert the 2 that she has to a 3, which is nice. And then the shields are going to go away because they have nothing to do with anything at this point. They get reset. Also, the vulnerable token, now I'm not 100% certain on this. I will double check. I think this one also comes off as well. I do believe that's correct, and if it's incorrect, I'll let you guys know in the comments later on. So we've cleaned that all up, and at this point, only the midwife is left, and this is unfortunate because the midwife is now going to get the protection bonus of 2, plus the 2 from this going into this maintenance phase, which means it's going to have 4 defense, making it that much tougher to get through. As you can see, this battle is going a little bit longer than I would have liked, and we've got 2 cards to draw, plus I had to reset the deck here, so we'll go ahead and flip these 2 remaining cards in the deck. We got ourselves Drain Life and Blood Call. We're going to go ahead and drop the last 4 cards. We got Ivy Skin. Next 2 up, I should say, is Ivy Skin and Mother Earth, and then finally the 6th card is going to be Drain Life. I have a phenomenal hand going into this round, but unfortunately the 6 damage I could potentially put on it is going to get chewed up by the defense, which is not fun. So maybe I should pivot and try to think about defending. Now, the downside is if we go into combat round number 4, we're going to have another individual joining the fray, making this fight even more painful. And we don't want to draw this fight out too much longer because that's where we get into territory that becomes stressful. Now, I'm already currently stressed because I don't think I can actually combo anything to take this thing down, but give me a second. I'll see if I can put something together. My friends, this is exciting. I might have found a combination to make this happen. So we're going to go ahead with the Blood Call to start things off. It's an attack 2. It's going to be a sacrifice. So we're going to go ahead and take another damage here, which is a bit dangerous. We're going to go up to a total of now 7 hits against us. This is going to do an attack 2. And because we have sacrifice involved, what does it state over here? Anything bolstered? Yes, this Universal Donor here says we're going to inflict bleed at the same time and also gain an energy token. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and play Drain Life. This card here is going to give an attack 2 and regaining a health. So basically taking back the health damage that I just put on myself for doing the sacrifice, which is nice. 2 damage on this midwife will take away the last defense she has. Now she is open to take damage, and we're going to use it. Now, in order to pay for this Drain Life, I'm discarding this Ivy Skin card for 2, going in the discard pile. We're going to use another Drain Life card. This one's going to cost 2. It's going to be attack 2 and regaining another health, which is awesome. So this 3 will go down to a 2. This is good news for us. We're no longer considered to be wounded. We have to pay for that, so we're going to discard this Ivy Skin here, the second one we had in hand. In order to pay for it, attack 2 is going to go straight to the midwife, which is awesome. That's going to give her a total of 5, plus she has the bleed on her. And then the final thing I'm going to do is pay for the last card I have in hand, which is Mother Earth. This one here here. I'm going to be using this energy token for, so we'll discard it. This is going to allow us to get a defense of 2, inflict weakness to 1 enemy that targets us. We can sacrifice, and then we lose a sanity. We're all squared away. Now, one thing I did just realize I might have missed is the fact that the GE-1 modifier to the first sacrifice card that we play for my character when my sanity is at 5 or less would have likely triggered already, I believe, because I did have 4 sanity and my maximum is 9, so I was in the insane category. Now, if I'm interpreting that correctly, it's actually making this cards with sacrifice easier to play. The downside, of course, I'm going insane and closer to death. Regardless of all of that, I'm going to try and remember that going forward. This defense here, not only do I get a defense off of it, the sacrifice keyword's on it, and that is going to go ahead and trigger the voodoo doll over here. And that says when playing a defensive card with sacrifice, which I just did, inflict bleed 1 to an enemy targeting me. So I'm going to go ahead and put another bleed on here, and this is how I knew things were looking good. Now, we can't stop the attack coming from the midwife, but after she does her attack, the 2 bleed on top of the 5 she's already got will take her down. So she's going to go ahead and throw her 3 damage attack, which will be reduced by 1 thanks to this token right here. So it's only 2 coming at us. I block both of it with my defense, which is great news. And then, just as I talked about moments ago, we're going to trigger the bleed on both of these, converting them both to damage, and that is going to take out the midwife. We have made it. We are currently insane, and we are also currently wounded. We just dealt with a combat encounter at phase 5, which means we're going to gain 3 coins, which I'm going to add to the 3 I already have for a total of 6. For the card reward, we got decent options here. We got a skill, single use, deal 1 damage, regain 1 health. We have a melee attack / defense, choose to attack 3 or defense of 3, or choose sacrifice 1 or lose 1 sanity. And finally, a melee attack, attack 2. If the enemy is trying to inflict you with a condition, add 2 and inflict vulnerable. I was tempted by the one on the right, but in the end, I chose the one in the middle, giving me options going forward. Now, after taking a look at the different insane conditions for the other characters and then double checking the one for the sorcerer, although I can interpret it 2 different ways, I believe the first way is the correct way, and that is that when you play your first sacrifice card, when you are in an insane state, that card is a GE-1 modifier, which means it's cheaper to play that card than normal because you have gone nuts, and as a sorcerer, that benefits you. At this point, we were successful in the combat encounter, so I placed an exploration token right here, and now we have the choice to move around. I could choose to move back down this pathway here and head to another combat encounter, or I could head up here and we could actually interact with Cthulhu, which is exactly what we're going to do. It's not necessarily the smartest move because I'm going in insane as well as wounded, and I'm not doing so good in either of those departments, but I do want to show you what the boss battle is all about. We're now heading into the boss battle against the Guardian, great old one, Cthulhu. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and draw 2 enemies for each character. In my case, it will just be 2 for my 1 character. We're drawing them from the middle deck there. On the far left, you're going to see the round order and what this Cthulhu character is going to be doing to us. In round 1, it's going to be cursing us. Round 2, recovery. And it will rinse and repeat this throughout the 6 rounds. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, each of the bosses inside the game is going to be very unique. You have to take a different approach for each of them. Cthulhu here is going to throw tentacles at you, which is quite fun. You're going to have the name here in the top center of the card. You'll have the threat in the top left. Down here, you'll have the attack value of that tentacle, and then below that, the health. And it's worth mentioning that the tentacles in this case all have the exact same initiative value, so you don't have to shuffle them around or change anything. Now, if an enemy loses all of its health, you discard it. If at any point there are no enemies left in the draw pile, you shuffle the discarded enemies and create a new draw pile. At the end of each round, each enemy still in play is going to add its threat value to the Cthulhu card. If the threat value reaches 6, the game immediately ends in failure. If my character is defeated, the game immediately ends in a failure, and if by the end of round number 6 no character has been defeated, the game ends in a success. So the aim of the game with Cthulhu is just to stay alive long enough to survive the encounter. You're not going to be able to kill Cthulhu, you just have to be able to withstand him. So with my deck all shuffled up, let's go ahead and draw up our cards. We'll reveal the curse for this very first round 1 as it states right here. But first, let's find out what's in our hand just so we can see. We got Drain Life. We're going to have Blood Call, like that one. It's always a free one. I love it. Mother Earth. Next up, we've got Universal Donor. That's a great one to get early on. And then we've got Absorption. Is that 5? Yes, it is. 1 more to go. We got Chaining. Pretty good hand to start. Let's go ahead and reveal the curse and find out what we're dealing with. Off the top of the deck, we got ourselves Combustion. This is an interesting one. It says if an enemy deals damage, it deals 1 additional damage to the same target. Let's start things off by playing Universal Donor. This is, again, the permanent skill, which I like. Your melee attacks and sacrifice inflict a bleed, and we get the extra boost on the energy side of the equation, so we'll place that in play. It doesn't cost anything. The first card I'm going to use is going to be Blood Call. I think this makes sense. Now, if I was playing this and it had anything more than a 0 here, I could take advantage of the fact that I'm going insane, and that would allow me to -1 off the cost of this card because it has sacrifice on it, but not going to be able to take advantage of that because it's already 0. It's going to be an attack of 2 and a sacrifice of 1, so we're going to go ahead and take a health hit here, which is not so nice, but that will provide me with benefits. So you can see here on the Universal Donor, melee attacks with sacrifice inflict a bleed plus an additional energy. So that's nice. We'll go ahead and take that. We'll take the bleed token. We'll place it on. And which one are we going to hit here? We need 3 on this one and 4 on this one. So let's go ahead. Oof, this is a tough call. Which way do I go here? 3 on that. We're going to probably be hitting this one right here. So we're going to put bleed on this one, and we're also going to put the attack 2 of the damage on this one as well. After that, we're going to go ahead and use this card right here, Chaining, to discard it for 2 in order to play Drain Life. This will be an attack 2, allows me to regain my health by 1, which is nice because, well, I need it. We're going to bring ourselves back down to 6. 2 damage on this is going to take out this one right here, so the bleed condition won't even matter because this has been knocked out. Next up, we're going to go ahead and use Absorption. This one here is going to cost 2, and I only have 1 card in hand. This one here I'll discard for 1, but we also have the one we generated from earlier for the melee attack, which I'll discard right now to pay for Absorption. This one's going to do a single use 3 attack, which is exactly what we need to hit its health for 3. We're going to regain a health and lose a sanity though. So here's an example of us going through an entire game round. We're going to go ahead and put everything else into the discard pile. After completing that game round, we were able to take out both the tentacles that were on us, which means no threat being added to Cthulhu, which is great because if it gets up to 6 threat, it would take us down. You'll see if we had left one of the cards upright, it would have that threat value, which it would then apply up to the boss. It would also be hitting us for damage on top of it, but it's not going to happen. Also, the curse means nothing because an enemy is not going to deal damage to anybody, so nothing bad there. So it's important that we took out the tentacles to avoid the threat from being placed on Cthulhu, but the other reason it's important to take out them completely and not leave any damage on them is as we go into round number 2, they're going to go through a recovery step where they go ahead and recover all damage that are on them. So you really want to take them down fully if you're doing it at all. The only thing about this battle I wasn't 100% certain on is whether the curse card will stick around going into round number 2, or if truly the curse that's drawn only affects in the given round and then gets trashed until another curse comes in the future for round number 3. So I'm playing it as if the curse is only in play for the given round based on this round structure here, so I've removed it as well. But we do have 2 new creatures, tentacles, coming at us, and we have to deal with these. On this poll, we've got ourselves Trail, Ivy Skin, Blood Call. We've got Concentrate Pain, Mother Earth, and Ivy Skin. Let's start off this round by using Blood Call. Yet again, another sacrifice card that I can't take advantage of the -1 for, but that's okay. It's an attack 2, sacrifice 1, so we're going to put 2 damage. Now, you think I might put that on this expansion one for 2 damage and just take it out, but I'm going to trigger this Universal Donor here, which is going to inflict 1 for bleed and also gain me an energy. So what I want to do is I actually want to... Oh, this is an interesting one. So I want to figure out whether or not I want to put it on here, because if I put it on here, I can do 2 damage and get the bleed on there, and that gets it a little closer to being taken out. I think that's the right thing to do. So we'll go with that for now. Let's go ahead and take 2 damage and chuck it on. Next up, I'm going to play Mother Earth. This one's going to be paid for by Trail being discarded, and this one is going to give me 2 defense, inflict weakness to 1 enemy that targets me. I have to sacrifice 1, and I lose a sanity, so it's pretty nasty. Next, I'm going to play Ivy Skin. This is going to cost 2 to play, so I'm going to discard both of these 2 cards, Trail and Mother Earth, to do it. This will give me a defense of 2, and I inflict a bleed to all enemies that target me, both tentacles. Last but not least, I'm going to use Concentrate Pain. This is a skill. Discard all conditions of up to 2 enemies. Deal 1 damage for each discarded condition, and then regain 1 sanity. This is a very powerful card, and I've set myself up for it. I'm paying for it with Ivy Skin for 2. So this is pretty cool. Let's get rid of some conditions. For the Sweet Tentacle over here, it already has 2 damage on it, so we're going to go ahead and cash in these 2 right here in order to put 2 more damage on it, and that's going to be enough to take out this one. So we're going to go ahead and flip it over so we don't have to worry about that whatsoever. And then over here, we have just a single one, so we're going to go ahead and convert that into a damage. Not enough to kill it, but I've got a plan. It's too bad my class relic could have triggered. It says at the end of your turn, if an enemy has more than one condition, deal 1 damage to an enemy or regain 1 sanity. So as of right now, because I cashed in a number of tokens to deal damage to take out the one here on the left and to just deal 1 damage to this one here, I have nothing left to make use of this class relic at this point. So I can't get that additional damage, which I need right here. So we are now heading into the next round of play, which is going to be round number 3, which is going to be a curse. We still have to draw a new tentacle to show up here in this position. So we have another one to deal with. The one that was already here stays here. And as we're in round number 3, we're dealing with a curse rather than recovery. If we were in a recovery, one of those rounds, then we'd be recovering all of the damage off these tentacles. We're going to go ahead and draw a curse and see what we get. This shouldn't be good. Distortion. This one says ignore GE +1 effects. So that's going to come into play. It's not going to be too much of an issue for me right now. Now, I just remembered I didn't actually do the attack from the tentacle back at me for the one that survived, which is going to be 4, but I had a 2 defense on me, but I am taking 2 damage, which is not good. So that's going to bump me up to a total of 7 now, which I'm not a fan of. The remaining 3 cards in my deck are... The remaining 3 cards that were in my deck is Drain Life, Ivy Skin, and this final one here. And then we got 3 more to go. We got ourselves Blood Call. We've got ourselves Drain Life. And last but not least, we got Mother Earth. Now, the current curse that's in play right now is messing with the GE +1 effect. I have my Universal Donor card. It is worth mentioning the library card I got way back gives me the ability to discard a condition or a curse. So when I get a curse here I really don't like, or I want to take advantage of the GE +1, for instance, I could use that card at any time to get rid of a curse. I'm going to hold on to it for now because I don't mind that, because I actually think I have what I need in hand to pull off what I need to do, because these things only have 2 health each. These are some of the weaker tentacles I've faced, so this should be quite easy. I'm going to go with the Drain Life. We're going to do it back to back, and we're going to take both of these down. So we're going to go ahead and use 2 for this one to pay for it, and then 2 for this one to pay for it. On top of it, I'm regaining health, but both of these tentacles are being taken out, and that's 2 damage being taken away, so I've only got 5 now. We made it halfway through the battle. We're into round number 4, which is recovery. There's nothing to recover at this point. We've got these 2 nasty tentacles to deal with. These are heavy hitters, and they also have a lot of health to get through. So this is not going to be an easy round. Let's go ahead and draw our cards up, see what we get. Off the top here, we got Concentrate Pain. We've got Trail. We've got next Absorption. After that, we have Blood Call. Then we have Ivy Skin. And finally, we've got Mother Earth. Now, Mother Earth is a card that has Sacrifice 1 on it, so it'd be a great one to use to get the -1 for being insane. In other words, it'd be a free card to play. The downside is I lose Sanity if I use this card, and unfortunately my Sanity is already dangerous at 6, and I only have a current max of 9, so pushing that could be risky. Now, seeing as I've healed up, let's go ahead and push with Blood Call. This one's free, and it's going to do an attack, sacrificing 1. So we'll go ahead and place 1 extra damage on my character. We're going to do the attack of 2, and we're going to throw it again. So let's see. This one says attack characters lose 1 sanity. Attack characters lose 1 sanity. That's not good. So we're going to go ahead and throw 2 on this one right here. Thanks to the Universal Donor card, that's going to give us an infliction of bleed on that enemy, and also going to bump up our energy to 1 additional token here to use. Let's use Ivy Skin. We're going to pay for it with these 2 cards, and it's going to give us a defense of 2, inflict bleed on both enemies that target me. It's not a perfect turn, but I can certainly do something here. So we're going to go ahead with Absorption, and this one's going to be a single-use attack. 3, regain 1 health, lose a sanity. For 2, we're going to use this right now, paying for it with Concentrate Pain, which is tempting to use on its own to trigger the ones that I have here. I could do that, to be honest, but it doesn't really matter. I'd rather actually kill off the one that's going to hit me for more damage, I think. We're going to see how this pans out, but I wasn't able to pull off exactly everything I wanted to do. So single-use attack 3 going on this one. We'll take it out. We'll regain 1 health, so we'll take 1 health away from ourselves. We're going to lose a sanity, though, which is not good. So now we're up to a total of 7 sanity hits. The enemy's going to come back at me with an attack of 2, but I block it with my defense of 2, which is good news. The only thing is the attack characters lose 1 sanity, and that's not good. That pushes me 1 away from going completely insane and losing. I now have a total of 8, and my max is 9. The great news is the bleed is going to trigger, and that's 2 damage onto this thing, which is going to be 4, which will take it out. We are now headed to round number 5, a round I really didn't think I was going to make it to, and we're pulling a curse. So if there's ever a time to use my library card from earlier, this is going to be it. Let's see what we get. We have enemies gain +1 attack. No thank you. Let's go ahead and use this library card, and we're going to discard this curse. The last 2 cards in my hand are Chaining and Ivy Skin, so I grab those, we'll replenish our draw deck. Next 4 cards off the top of the deck are going to be, we got Absorption, that's a great one to have. We've got Drain Life, another solid one. After that we got Trail, and lastly we have Mother Earth. Now, one thing I've forgotten to this point is to place threat. When the tentacles were hitting me, there was only 2 of them that managed to actually make attacks against me and stick around during the round. So we should have 2 threat because each of those tentacles, after looking back, were 1 each for their threat in the top left-hand corner. So we're still far under the 6, but we don't want to forget about those threat tokens and placing those on. For round number 5, I think I've got a plan of action here. We're going to go ahead and do Drain Life. This is going to be attack of 2, regain 1 health for 2. So we're going to go ahead and discard Ivy's Skin to pay for it. So we'll toss that in the discard. This is going to be an attack 2. We're going to go ahead and place this attack 2, I believe, right here. And then we're going to go ahead and regain a health. So we're going to drop our health from 5 down to 4. So we're doing a pretty good job managing our health. Our sanity, on the other hand, is getting completely out of hand. Next up, we're going to go ahead and use Trail. This one's an attack 1. If the enemy has any kind of bleed or any other kind of a condition on it, you do the defensive 1. It doesn't. So really, I'm just using it for the attack 1 at this point, and I'm going to pay for it using the Mother Earth card. So we'll discard that into my discard pile, and that's going to do the attack 1 we need to take out this tentacle right here, flipping it over, which is good news for us. One less thing to deal with. Now, the final one here, I'm going to go ahead and use Chaining. This is a melee attack for 2. You inflict bleed as well as prison, which is pretty awesome. I'll talk about that in a second. We're paying for it with this absorption card here for 2. So we're going to go ahead and throw 2 on it. And of course, this is not going to be enough to actually take it out because it's 5, but it's something. So we'll go ahead and place a bleed token on it as well as that prison token. Now, finally, at the end of my turn, I actually have some condition tokens left on some enemies, and it states right here on my class relic, at the end of your turn, if an enemy has more than 1 condition, deal 1 damage to an enemy or regain a sanity. So I'm going to go ahead right now and regain a sanity to keep myself off the doorstep of going nuts. The remaining tentacle is going to throw its threat onto the pool, which is a total of 3 now. It's going to do its attack of 2 against me, but before that, this is going to trigger, which is known as a prison token, which is going to inflict a damage on this thing. These are really cool. If you can throw a damage at the last possible second, you can kill it before it even has a chance to attack, but unfortunately it just jumps it up to 3. It's now going to throw 2 at me, and I'm not blocking it, so I'm taking 2 damage, jumping me to a total of 6 damage, which is not all that great. And then this bleed condition is going to trigger, and that's going to add 1 damage back to the tentacle, which is currently at 4, just 1 shy away from being killed off. So at this point in time, we're moving into round number 6. We actually have a chance to pull this off. Now we're going into round 6, which is recovery. So what's going to happen is any existing tentacles that have damage on it are going to remove them, which is unfortunate because this one's really, really strong. And then we're going to reveal the next tentacle that will be here as well. This one is a 3. This is going to be a fun last round. For my final stand to see if I can outlast Cthulhu, I've got these 6 cards to work with. All right, let's go for it. Let's see if we can pull this off and survive. Let's go ahead with Blood Call to start things off. An attack of 2, sacrifice 1. So we'll go ahead and play this. This attack 2, I'm going to throw onto, I think, this one right here. So we're going to put 2 damage onto the heaviest of the 2 that we need to take down with 5 health. We're going to sacrifice 1, so we're going to give ourselves 1 hit. So now we're up to 7 damage, which isn't fun. Now this is going to trigger this one here. So we inflict a bleed on this one as well. We also gain an energy token, which isn't really going to be all that useful for what I'm planning on doing anyway. We're going to go ahead right now and play this card here. For the first time, this one's going to allow me to choose attack 3 or defense 3, or I could choose to sacrifice 1 or lose 1 sanity. I'm doing the very top one for an attack 3. We're going to go ahead and pay for this using this concentrate pain card, which I've had and used in the past. That is going to dole out 3 damage, which is enough to wipe out this individual right here. This one tentacle is now gone, which is awesome. The final one is right here. We only have 3 cards left in hand. We'll go ahead with Drain Life right off the top here and attack 2, regain 1 health. So in order to pay for this, we're going to go ahead and use Ivy Skin. This one's going in the discard pile. So we're attacking for 2 damage right here, regaining a health, so removing this health away, which is nice. And then we have this final card here, which costs 2, but I only have 1, so it's not going to work out. It's going to end up in my discard pile. That's going to do it for the turn. We weren't able to take out that last tentacle. It is now going to go ahead and trigger. It's going to throw another threat into the equation, so essentially this bumps up to 4, and then it's going to throw its 3 damage at me, which is going to be 3 on top of the 6 I already have, and that is going to be 9 damage, which is not enough to take me out, and my sanity is still within reason at 7, and we have survived all 6 rounds of Cthulhu. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the game review and gameplay video of Rise of Myths Cthulhu, coming from Synergic Games, landing on GameFound in the very near future. If you want to discuss more about this one, you can do so on our Discord channel. I'll put a link to that in the pinned comment video description, as well as you'll see the campaign page link where you can go check out more information around this game as it lands on GameFound. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below, and as always, keep on rolling solo.
Whoop.